Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my 1K Q&A and giveaway. Since I've recently hit 1,000 subscribers, it is now time to answer all of the questions you asked on my announcement video. For some reason there's a person here asking the questions for me, which feels fancy, but okay. What is your favorite hair color? I must say that I'm really enjoying rocking this blue, but I think that purple is my favorite, and not necessarily even the purple that I had before this, but I think a slightly different purple is going to end up being my favorite. That being said, I've liked all the ones I've tried this year, including that purple that ended up being pink. What's your favorite thing about the booktube community? My favorite thing about the booktube community is it does actually feel like a community. You go into other people's comment sections and you see people you know and you can start side conversations. And I know I'll never know everyone, but it's really fun to interact with as many people as possible. Do you have any advice for booktubers now that you're more experienced? I don't feel like my advice is going to be anything new, but if you're just starting out, just shoot a video. You don't actually have to post that first video. You can shoot a few videos before you end up posting a video. Figuring out your lighting situation, figuring out your editing, figuring out how you want to shoot your videos, that's all something you can figure out before you start showing people. Also figuring out what kind of videos you want to do to start, and then you can build on that skill set. So you might start your channel with a discussion of a book that you really enjoyed or you really didn't enjoy, but from there you can go on to participating in readathons or doing hauls or doing unhauls and doing all the different types of videos that you would find on YouTube. I feel like tags are a really fun thing to do when you're starting out, even if nobody's tagged you, because it gives you something to work from. Do you speak any other languages, or are there other languages you would like to learn? I do not really speak any other languages. I did learn French growing up and through high school, but I've lost most of it. Sometimes I can read a little bit and know basically what's going on, but I really can't speak it anymore. If you could travel into one of your favorite books, which one would you choose? This is a hard question. I feel like my answer would change day to day, because if I'm feeling very adventurous, I'd want to go into a book that's either in a completely different country or a completely different world. Or on days when it's gray and gross out and all I really want to do is read books and ignore the fact that I have responsibilities, I would want to go into a world that's comforting, so Words in Deep Blue would be great because I would just go and live in Henry's bookshop and it would be wonderful. Speaking of, I will do the random numbers generator at the end of the video, obviously. What's your favorite genre? I don't know that I have a favorite genre. What a cop-out. Yes, that can be a cop-out. Thanks for that. I do particularly enjoy contemporary, but I also really find myself drawn to science fiction and some fantasy as well. How do you do captions by yourself on YouTube? The most important thing about doing captions yourself on YouTube is making sure that when you upload a video, you schedule it to go up so that once it's fully uploaded, you can go into the settings on YouTube and do the captions. There are a couple of different ways you can do this. You can either use the auto captions and correct them because they're often hilariously, ridiculously wrong. And then also they don't use punctuation or capitalization. If you script your videos, you can just dump the script in there and then double check that the syncing has worked out properly. And if you don't do any of that and everything's just off the fly, you can watch the video and type it out. The video will actually pause every time you start typing, and then once you're done that, it will auto sync. From there, you still need to go back and check that it is synced properly because it's usually not really synced up to exactly what you're saying. So basically the process is upload to YouTube as a scheduled project and then either add my script, let the auto captions generate so I can change them, or just start typing. And then check the auto sync because it's never perfect. From there, make sure that's all saved, do anything else you need to do with the description, and then either leave it to upload when you need it to upload or put it live just then, depending on what you want to do. There are also tons of more in-depth tutorials on YouTube, so feel free to check those out. Where do you get your bookish t-shirts? I buy most of my bookish t-shirts from the internet, sites like QWERTY and T-Turtle and T-Fury. Basically anytime I see a bookish related shirt, I usually can't help myself, but I really need to stop because I have about 40 of them. What's your favorite library you've ever visited besides your own? I really like the main branch of the Seattle Library. It is absolutely beautiful. It is massive. Even the floors are impressive. If you ever find yourself in Seattle, be sure to check it out. How long have you worked at the library? I've worked at the library almost 2.5 years now. What's your favorite place to read? My favorite place to read is usually either on my bed or on this couch. The couch is more comfortable, but is usually being used by my roommate. What and where are all your dream travel plans? I don't usually try to put too much thought into my travel plans because I'm not in a position to be able to afford to travel to everywhere in the world that I would actually want to travel. At this point, I really feel like I need to tick off Australia and New Zealand on my list of places I've traveled. But then I've only sort of been to Asia because I've been to Russia, but I've been to like the European side of Russia. I haven't really hit South America yet, and I haven't been to Africa yet, although Egypt is high on the list of places I would love to see someday. And then of course, what adventurer doesn't want to go to Antarctica just to say you've been to Antarctica? If your 6-year-old self could inhabit your current body, what would she do first? My 6-year-old self would probably be delighted at all the books that she can read and also that she could drive. Hopefully not at the same time. Have you read or do you read books that deal with spiritual topics? I don't mind if spirituality is kind of a theme within a fiction book, but I don't really read any nonfiction that has to deal with spirituality. I'm not personally spiritual. What is the first book you ever read? I don't know the first book I ever read because I don't really remember anything before the age of 10, and I was definitely reading before then, but my parents tell me that the first book they thought I was reading was a copy of Cinderella. It turns out that I would sit on the doorstep of my grandparents' house and I would read the book, but really I just memorized all the words and where the page flips were, so I'd be reading it and flipping the pages in the appropriate places, and they thought I was a genius. I mean, I am pretty smart considering I memorized an entire book while I was like 2 or 3, but I wasn't a genius in the way they thought. Do you like graphic novels? Graphic novels are awesome. Do you prefer physical copies or do you read on your phone? I prefer to have physical books. If I am in a time crunch and I really need to get something read for whatever reason, I will read books on my phone, but I prefer to have the physical book. That being said, I feel like I can get through a book on my phone a lot quicker just because it's just tapping and your wrists don't get sore from holding the book up. There are pros and cons to both. What's your favorite character? How dare you, you monster? I cannot pick one favorite character. What a cop-out. I don't care that it's a cop-out. Did you always know you were a reader or did you have an epiphany moment? I have always known that I was a reader. Like I said, I don't even remember back to when I started reading because I don't really remember anything before age 10, and I had definitely been reading for at least 6 years at that point. On those like back to school surveys where it'd be like, what are your hobbies? Mine were reading and writing. If you had to travel to one part of South America, which one would it be? This is going to feel like I'm pandering to the audience because the person that asked this has Trinidad in their username, but actually I would want to go to Trinidad and Tobago to visit my friend Sajed. Also because of him, I've read at least one book that's set there and it sounds like it would be really pretty. Is there a song that reminds you of a book? I'm gonna go obvious here and say Paperback Writer by the Beatles. What Friends character do you relate most to? Ooh, Friends, you have not aged well. I'm kind of weird like Phoebe, but I'm also really kind and caring like Joey, so maybe an amalgamation of them. Would you ever move to the US, and if so, where and why? I assume this is being asked in like an alternative reality where moving to the States wasn't actually incredibly difficult to do and that I had something that the States needed in terms of skills. And if so, I would want to move to Missoula, Montana and work with the Complexly team. What made you start BookTube? So I started doing YouTube in general before I realized that I wanted to be a booktuber specifically, and obviously I still do things outside of booktubing, but booktubing has taken over this channel and I'm perfectly okay with that. While I was playing around with different videos and trying to figure out what I wanted to do on this platform, I just realized that I kept talking about books and kept talking about books, and this is nothing new to me because that is something I did anyway, just not on camera always. And then a friend of mine had a series on her channel, which I am so bummed is gone now for reasons that she couldn't control, where she did weekly wrap-ups, and she's the type of person that can read like 10 books in a week. I just got inspiration from that, and as soon as 2017 started, I decided I was going to start doing weekly wrap-ups as well, but as you probably know from watching my channel, I also include things like what I've watched because I was afraid that there would be weeks where I wouldn't have read anything or had only read one thing and wouldn't have enough to talk about. Would you ever consider branching out from books, TV, and movies, etc.? I mean, branching out from books, movies, TV, I guess that would be video games, and I guess I could critique video games, but I don't really play many of them. I used to play a bunch as a kid, don't get me wrong, but then I fell into the trap of video games are for boys, and then I just felt like I was not being included in that and just drifted away after playing way too much Quake. What video are you the most proud of? This question is a little difficult because there aren't many videos where I've used a lot of really technical skills because I've really mostly just figured out how to point a camera at myself, talk, edit so I sound sort of eloquent, and put images on the screen. I'd like to learn how to do more things in Premiere, moving graphics, that type of thing, but I'm not quite there yet. And I feel like I'm not going to be able to narrow it down to one video because I'm terrible at narrowing things down to one thing. I'm a big fan of my Recommends Books series where I go to different conventions and ask people to recommend books. I'm also pretty proud of my A to Z of Queer Lit series. The third video should be coming out Not quite exactly soon, but I've almost read enough books to make another video. There was also this one time after the Orlando shooting where I just sat in a field in Eugene, Oregon and basically confessed that, hey, yeah, I'm bisexual. So, you know, from a personal standpoint, that happened. What is your favorite queer media? I think my current favorite queer media has to be Queer Eye. I am absolutely loving that series. There's also a book that they put together coming out soon, and I'm already on the holds list of the library even though it hasn't been published yet. I still prefer to read my queer content, but obviously I'm really enjoying that. Also, if you have any recommendations for movies or TV shows I should be watching that happen to be on Canadian Netflix, please let me know. What is your favorite childhood book? As a kid, I read most of the Nancy Drew books. I actually still have about 50 of them on my bookcase right now. I haven't opened them in about 20 years, and I'm kind of scared to do so because I assume there's probably some problematic things in there. But there was just something about a girl detective that I really dug when I was about 12 years old. Do you prefer to read with background noise, or do you find it distracting? It depends on the background noise. If I'm in like a cafe and it's just kind of a buzz of noise and I can't really discern anybody's conversation, that is perfect. As soon as I'm able to follow somebody's conversation, I suddenly can't read the book anymore and I just find it way too distracting. Silence is actually perfect, but when I'm out in public reading, obviously that din is what I'm looking for. What's your Myers-Briggs personality type and do you agree with it? You know, I haven't looked at my Myers-Briggs since high school, so it's been a while. I know I was definitely classified as an introvert, for sure. But as for the other characteristics, I really couldn't tell you what they were. All I really remember is we took this in class and one of my friends was the exact same as me and we started calling each other Personality Pal, or PP for short, and it's real cute. Sometimes when we see each other years later, we still call each other Personality Pal, even though I don't remember what our personalities were. What made you decide to start making videos on YouTube? I had been thinking about making videos for quite a while and just knew I didn't really have the technical skills and I didn't have a fancy camera and lights and everything like that. But I went to VidCon 2015 on the community track, and after being there I felt that I could probably do it. And a couple of months later I set up this wall that's behind me. It has a bunch of really cool stuff on it and I decided that was as cool a place as any to film in front of. Do you have any public speaking background? My background isn't specifically in public speaking, but it is in theater. I grew up a complete theater kid. I was that annoying person that knew everybody's lines. I did theater through elementary school, middle school, high school. I even went to university for a couple of years for theater. And when I realized that wasn't really going to work out on a professional level, I ran away to Europe for a couple of years and actually performed in the world's largest neo-pagan fire festival. I still do a little theater here and there, but it kind of clashes with my work schedule, so I haven't been doing as much recently. Where in the world have you lived? In terms of places where I've lived and been able to work, obviously Canada, which is where I am from. I also lived in Ireland for a year and Scotland for a year. And then in terms of places where I've stayed for a month, which I feel like is long enough to say that I've lived there. Obviously not getting the full experience, but I've lived there for a slightly extended period of time. I lived in a small town in Portugal, I lived in Athens, and I lived on Crete. If you could travel anywhere without worry of money, where would it be? This would definitely be an around-the-world trip where I stop in every country for at least a month. When and how did you discover Nerdfighteria? There's actually a whole video of me telling this story up on the Road to Nerdfighteria channel, but I'm gonna tell you it quickly anyway because I love this story. So in 2013 I was traveling with some friends and we all met up in Dublin for St. Patrick's Day weekend, and because I used to live in Dublin I could show people around, and one of my friends wanted to go to the bookstore, so we went to the closest one I knew. She went to go get another book by this author she really liked, and we met up in the queue and I glanced down to see what she's purchasing and burst out into laughter because she was purchasing a book called An Abundance of Catherines. And I had to laugh because my first name is actually Catherine, the same spelling as on the book, and her first name is also Catherine, the same spelling on the book, but she goes by Katie and I obviously go by Kathy, always have, always will, won't even realize you're talking to me if you call me Catherine. Fast forward a few months and I'm back in Canada and my best friend is talking to me about this series that she keeps watching on YouTube where these two brothers are talking about different science things or different English or history things, and I get into it and I start watching and I go, is that the same John Grange from that book I laughed about? And of course we were watching Crash Course, and of course it was. From there I started watching their videos from the beginning, and although I got about halfway through 2008 before I moved and lost my place, I have seen a lot of their older videos, but obviously not all of them. There was also a 3-week span where I read all of John's books up until that point, and that was a lot. And I've been a fan ever since. I've met both of them briefly. They're very nice humans. I'm very excited for Hank's book to come out. I read the first 6 chapters years ago and then hounded him at VidCon to finish it because I really need to know what happens. And then I've made a lot of friends in the community. In fact, the book club I go to on a monthly basis places does a Nerdfighter book club. What top tips have you picked up for content creators? My top tip is just try something out. It might fail spectacularly. Sometimes people don't see your videos because small creators have a hard time finding people who want to watch their videos, and that's fine. It's just going to be a thing. The platform is very saturated. But make things that you want to make. Don't make things because you think other people are going to specifically like them better than what you actually want to make. I mean, if it works out that you want to make the kind of content that people want to see, all the power to you. But if you're going to just make content that other people want and you don't care about, you're not going to last very long. Leading characters in fiction who are bi. Who are some of your favorites? I mean, Grey's Anatomy is an ensemble piece, so she's not really the leading character, but I absolutely loved her. It's Callie Torres, of course. Frances from Radio Silence, Emmy King from The Brightsiders, and of course, Evelyn Hugo. Oh my goodness, I'm doing a reread right now and I just love that book. What is a book you have reread multiple times and can see yourself reading again? I mean, I haven't technically reread this book in completion because I'm reading it for the second time right now, but Evelyn Hugo, like I just mentioned. I've read Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda a handful of times, and I could see myself continue to reread it because it's adorable. I'd never really been a rereader before I started BookTube and then started just rereading things for the hell of it. So I'm sure I will find some more things that I really enjoy rereading, like Words in Deep Blue. How many times can I talk about that book? How do you choose the books to read in your tub? For example, do you just have a few books that are tub reads and you read them over and over again? Basically, whatever physical book I'm reading at the time is the book that I'm reading in the tub. Sometimes I'll have weeks where the previous week has been the same book, so I'll start another book before finishing that book just to have a different book in the tub. And I mostly do that because I document that project on Instagram, so if you look at my Instagram every Wednesday, I will post a picture of what I'm reading, what I'm drinking on my bathtub. And I just don't really want to post the same book twice in a row. What are some things you've unexpectedly loved about the places you've traveled? If you asked me before I moved to Scotland if I thought I would love haggis and also talking to dudes in kilts at 2 o'clock in the morning on the way home from the pub, I probably would have been ambivalent, but I actually really enjoy both of those things. I stopped eating meat years after leaving Scotland, but there is some vegetarian haggis that is also very good. Do you have any comfort books, and what are they? I don't have any specific comfort books, but picking up any book that I've really enjoyed before is always a comfort to me. Who is your least favorite main character from a book? For this, it's probably Walt from the book Walt, which I read during the read-a-thon, because he's the type of main character that just stalks people and also possibly does worse things than that. Don't want to spoil it, but he's creepy and not at all likable. And those were all the questions. 25 people asked me questions, so I'm just going to number them off 1 to 25 on my spreadsheet. I'm going to use a random numbers generator right now to pick off one of those numbers between 1 and 25, and then I will let you know who won the book. And generate. Number 15, all right. And our winner is Creative Colette. Creative Colette, please send me an email. My email address is down below to let me know where in the world you are and your postal address so I can send you Words in Deep Blue. Thank you once again for joining me in this celebration of this milestone. I'm sure that if I'm ever so lucky to have another 1,000 subscribers, I will do another Q&A. Did I give you any answers that surprised you? Let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!